This week on the Baseline Podcast, we celebrate our 50th episode with doing what we do best, which is talk about sports. This week, we are talking about the NFL. We're giving our preview of the upcoming season. We talk about the best second-year QBs, who we think is going to make the biggest jump. We talk about all of the NFL races in the divisions, what's going on in Cleveland, and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben. That's Josh. And it's just two of us this week, Josh.
It is just us two. We are joined by no guests. None of us two main co-hosts are absent. It's just like, I guess, the good old original days.
Yeah, good old original days. Speaking of original days, this is the 50th episode of the podcast, Josh. 50? 50. And you've been a part of 31. So
okay, that's what I was just going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, you've been a part of 31. If I messed up my numbers, I'm terrible at math, so it's fine. But no, Josh, we've been doing this for a while, me and you, and then I started by staring into a camera and just talked about sports, and it was very boring. And then Josh came along. So I just want to thank everyone out there for just, it keeps booming. Every episode seems like we have new people listening, new comments, new people interested in what's going on. And yeah, that's what we're here to do. Josh and I, we love talking about sports. We started a long time ago. If you want to know that story, go back to like episode 20 something, and that's where that's all at. So, but yeah, anyways, we are here. If you want to know more about what's happening, make sure you go over to our Instagram at baseline.podcast, where you can check out all of the different things that are coming out. We hopefully will be coming out with some like top 25s, things like that. Some, our QB picks, our college picks, things that are interesting to us. So, Josh, a lot of things have been happening on in the NFL. We've been talking about a lot of different sports lately. Michigan, Ohio State. We talked about it with my dad last week. Josh, what are we talking about this week, and what's coming? It's football season, Josh. It's football.
Yeah, it's been we've been very heavy on the college football side, but with the NFL's Hall of Fame game training camp underway, we thought that we should hop on the trend and discuss maybe some of what's going on in NFL preseason action right now. Everybody's in camp, so that means there's some quarterback battles. There's also rookies last year that are looking to take that next big step forward. There's rookies this season that are looking to make, an impact. There's all kinds of like new signings and trades and players in new uniforms. So a lot to talk about today, Ben, or that we could talk about today. We're going to talk about, I guess, just some of the general stuff going on in camp. And we're also going to maybe zero in on a couple teams that we think are maybe being overlooked. We also got some news about the Browns, as always. They can't just stay out of the headlines. So I think, we got a lot on the agenda today. But just initially, Ben, I'd like to touch on some QB battles. It seems if my memory serves me correct, it seems like there's been a lot more QB battles in the past than there are right now. Like right now, I got 4. And maybe you could even argue that there are really only 2, but I think Carolina between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold is one that hasn't been decided yet, although I think that will end up being Baker Mayfield. Pittsburgh.
It's the story, Josh. It's the story.
It is, yes, the storyline for sure. But Pittsburgh between Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett. The Seahawks with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, and the Giants with Tyrod Taylor and Daniel Jones. And I don't know if there's any that maybe I forgot there, but I think those are the main 4. And like I said, I think you could argue that it's really Baker Mayfield's job in Carolina. And maybe some people know a little bit better than I do that Daniel Jones, that might be his job with the Giants. But the fact that Tyrod Taylor's over there makes me wonder what could be going on there. And we also had it decided that Trey Lance is the quarterback in San Francisco. So there's no more battle there with Jimmy G.
Yeah.
But Ben, which of these quarterback battles are you most zeroed in on and interested in?
If I was, the normal calm answer, I'd be like, Carolina, because it just seems right? Baker Mayfield. But no, I want to touch on the Giants job because I think you said something interesting there. You said Tyrod Taylor's there. When have we ever seen Tyrod Taylor? He always comes in at like the most time when there's unsettledness at quarterback, right? The Browns,
yes.
The Chargers, the Bills before that. And here he is. Daniel Jones is known by many out there that he just has this, I don't know. I don't know how to describe Daniel Jones. He's not really loved by a lot of people. But no, I think I really think out of that job, I think the question for the Giants is, do you go with the veteran presence of Tyrod Taylor, Or do you try to stick it out one more time with Daniel Jones? If it all goes, awry, then you go out and get yourself Bryce Young, you go get yourself CJ Stroud or whatever. But probably the most interesting job for me is, what is Pittsburgh going to do? That's my interesting thing is it going to be Kenny Pickett, or like, who is it going to be? So that's my big thing. I would love to see them go Kenny Pickett, because I just think it'd be kind of a fun story. I don't know why. I just think it would be. But I think it could be Kenny Pickett, or it could go the other way. It'll just be really interesting to see. But Josh, I want to know your take on it, and then let's go back to the Carolina thing and talk about it. So let me get your take on it.
Yeah. So the Giants one definitely is interesting to me as well, because the fact that they did not take one of these quarterbacks this year tells me one of two things. One, they didn't think that their future quarterback was in this draft, or like that there was anybody worth taking. So they passed on. Like, I thought there was a chance that they might go with Malik Willis there in our mock draft discussion, but did not take any of the quarterbacks. So it must mean that Daniel Jones is who they believe in, right? But then, like I said, Tyrod Taylor's kind of been that guy that's bridged the gap for a lot of teams. Like, he was there in Cleveland before they decided to go with Baker Mayfield. He was there with the Texans before he ended up getting injured against our Cleveland Browns that week 2. And then Davis Mills kind of took the job. He also was the quarterback, I believe, with the Chargers before Justin Herbert came along. He had that rib issue, or like he got his lung punctured actually. And then Herbert took the job from him. So here Tyrod is again battling out for another job. And I am curious how they're going to decide this, because if they decide to go with Daniel Jones and he's clearly not the guy, like, are they going to bench him for Tyrod the rest of the season and then draft a guy at the end of the year? Or will they just, maybe ride out the whole season with one of these guys and look to maybe cut or trade one of them, like, once camp ends? You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes that happens too. They just straight up cut a guy. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Giants. Maybe the most interesting one to me. And then the Steelers, like, I think it's going to be either Trubisky, which is why they traded for him, or Kenny Pickett, because they drafted him. I think Mason Rudolph, like, I threw him in here because he has experience as the starter.
Oh,
but
Mason. He likes to
I
get
really
hit by
don't.
helmets.
He would be the third guy, I would guess. Like, if I had to pick a guy that was going to win, I would think they would go with Mitch, even just for the sake of, let's give Kenny like 4 weeks before he's ready to start, like around week 5. And they already know what they're getting out of Rudolph. But Mitch Trubisky's played at a Pro Bowl level, which you can debate that, I'm sure. He's been named a Pro Bowler, is what I should say. He hasn't really played at a Pro Bowl level. But we could also, after seeing Matt Nagy, the way that he's running offense and how he has basically set up Justin Fields to fail, that maybe, Trubisky was the victim of some pretty bad coaching over there too. So maybe he comes to Pittsburgh and he ends up being like a guy that can start maybe not just 1 season, but 2 seasons. And I think they took Kenny Pickett in the first round for a reason. I think they think that that'll be their guy, like maybe not this season, but eventually. So that Pittsburgh one, especially since it's in our AFC North division, very interesting. But now we can move on to that Carolina one, Ben.
Boy.
It's very, like, Carolina has traded, correct me if I'm wrong, they sent 2nd and 3rd round picks for Sam Darnold a year ago.
I believe so, yes.
And then they just sent a 3rd rounder to go get Baker Mayfield. And they still might need to draft a quarterback in the future. Like, I think they could have used those picks to get, like, maybe better assets. Maybe they could have held out on maybe getting a quarterback. Maybe they could have just rode the season out with Darnold, because he really wasn't so terrible when the offensive line wasn't, like, injury plagued and things like that. Like, Carolina started off 3-0 or 4-0 last year. But you know how I feel about Baker Mayfield? I think this is definitely his job. I think that's why they made this trade, because they do not believe in Sam anymore. And, depending on how that offensive line holds up, we've seen Baker Mayfield do very well behind a strong offensive line in Cleveland. So he might not have as much time in Carolina, but he's got some dogs with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I think that this is his job to lose at this point.
This is what I'll say about this. I think, yes, I agree with you. But the question is, will Baker's ego be under control, or is it going to ruin him? That's my only thing for Baker.
Assuming that Sam wins the starting job and he's forced to get back up.
I'm saying if Baker wins it. What I'm saying is his ego, his own persona, right?
I got you.
What has got in his way in Cleveland? What got in his way in Oklahoma when he struggled? It was always his, like, this kind of like divisive personality he tends to have sometimes. Does that make sense? So like,
Mm-hmm.
you hear what they said in Cleveland about him. You hear what they've said about him sometimes in Oklahoma, the way he kind of came on and kind of that. So I'm not saying he's going to be like that. Maybe it's changed. I don't know. But what I will say is, if anything we know of Baker is when Baker gets on a roll, he can be one of the best QBs in the NFL, hands down. But when he hits a snag or when something goes wrong and his whole emotions start getting into him, I worry that could be the downfall, because what is this first game going to be like? Because we know he's going to have a lot of emotion.
That week one game is
That's what I'm
against
saying.
Cleveland. There's going
That's
to
what
be
I'm saying.
emotions. It will be an emotional game.
Let's say Sam Darnold doesn't win, Baker wins it. I think it's going to be a great game. But the question is, the reason why I'm going to pick the Browns in that game is because I think Baker, if he does win the job, he's going to have way too much emotion to it. We see what happens when he has emotion. He grabs his junk. He points that, like, he gets so involved in the personal battles. Does he realize that it's more than just him out there? That's the question I have for Baker. It's always been the question I've had for Baker ever since he set foot in Cleveland.
For sure. And I mean, he has, I guess, had similar games like this. Like, he had that shootout with Patrick Mahomes back in the college days against Texas Tech, his old team in college.
Yeah.
He's performed well in big games at college, like against your Ohio State Buckeyes, against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the postseason. So, I mean, he's performed well in big games, but I don't know if he's ever had or been in a moment that's going to involve this much emotion or this much revenge. You know what I mean? Because at Texas Tech, he did decide to transfer. That was his decision. Yeah. And in Cleveland here, like, they decided that he wasn't good enough, and they went out and made a trade for a guy that they thought was better. So this is, I think,
the fact that he won't even be playing.
Those.
And in fact, he won't even be playing. So
Deshaun will not be playing. Yeah,
that's the thing. So I think, what is my personal feeling? I think unless Sam does something remarkable in these preseason games, unless he goes out and just does something outlandish and in training camp and stuff like that, this is Baker's job to lose. Now, I think Baker could easily screw it up, because it seems to be Baker's MO sometimes, is just something happens to Baker.
That is why we say it's his job to lose.
Yeah, because I think Sam Darnold has I think he was overhyped coming out. I think Sam Darnold could be a very good, I hate to say it, but like a very good, I don't know, Chase Daniels, right? Like, I hate to say it that way, but a guy that can make millions of dollars doing this game. But I don't know if he'll ever be that guy that's going to go out there and start another 16 games. You got to tell me a team that will take Sam Darnold on. If the 49ers are giving up on Garoppolo, who I think is better than Sam Darnold, then who's taking Sam Darnold? So that's my thought.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, there have been guys, like we mentioned, Tyrod Taylor, even, like, he's made a career out of like being this bridge guy. Josh McCown kind of stuck around for a very long time, and Jacoby Brissett. Exactly. Yeah. Like, you can make a career out of like those kind of opportunities, or you could be like Chase Daniels, you said, a guy that literally never sees the field. Like, that guy actually never sees the field. Ridiculous. Yeah. So good discussion there on Carolina. And then I don't think we need to spend too much time on this one in Seattle. Geno Smith, Drew Lock. Do you have kind of like a feeling of who that might be?
I don't know, man. It's just weird.
Do you feel like anybody, like, there's an advantage to either one of those guys?
Dude, I feel like they just decided, you know what? Like, I thought if any team, that was the team was going to take Baker, because at least like they knew what they were getting. Like, do you know what you're getting with Drew Lock? Do you know what you're getting with Geno Smith? Geno Smith has been like disappeared ever since he left the Jets, right? And Drew Lock is just he's like a worse Baker ego-ish person. Like,
he actually hasn't won anything. Like, Baker has some wins in this league, and
Drew Lock's
literally has no reason.
Drew Lock's rapping on the sideline, like, dude, I think you should go out and make sure you're actually throwing touchdown passes. But again, this is just me saying Seattle's kind of screwed, I think, at this point. Like, they had their opportunity to get, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's still out there, so maybe they go out and get Jimmy G. I don't think so, because I think Pete Carroll has got some weird thing, something up there in Seattle that just they think they can handle their own business. It's like that in Portland, right? Like with Damian Lillard and all that. So I don't know what happens up there in the Northwest, but
there's a lot changing in Seattle though. Like now they're having to move on from Russell Wilson. The Legion of Boom is like all gone.
It's gone. Like,
they still have a good receiving group there with DK and Lockett.
They just locked him up too.
They drafted.
They just locked it. But my thing is are you planning to lose enough games? Because I don't know I think they're good enough that they're not going to lose 13 plus games. Are you going to be bad enough to where you can get a Young or a Stroud or, a Levis or any of these guys are up there? Are you going to be bad enough? Because I feel I don't know.
I think with Geno, they would have been bad enough. Like, I don't know why they had to go out and trade for Drew Lock. That's the whole confusing thing
Pete
about
Carroll.
this. Like, do
Pete
they
Carroll
think?
doesn't want to lose?
Yeah, like they must see something in Drew Lock, or yeah, like just the trade for him is kind of confusing overall to me. But between him and Geno, yeah, I really don't know if there's any advantage there. And if what they're really trying to do is tank, I think they could have just done it with Geno and not made the trade for Lock at all.
Oh, well, I think it reminds me a lot of the Browns a few years ago, that you never really knew what quarterback you're going to get. You just go to training camp and go like, oh, look, there's a new guy, right? Like, that's what I'm kind of getting the vibes of. Like, hey, we're good enough to win a few games, but we want to make sure we're bad enough to stay in the top 10.
Yeah. And since you did bring up Jimmy G, I think we can conclude this QB battle discussion with maybe those teams that might be destinations that the 49ers could trade Jimmy Garoppolo to, because these are the 4 teams that really have battles. Everyone else is either like testing out a rookie that this year, or like a guy that they drafted last year, or they have like that franchise guy. So I'm not really sure too many scenarios. The Browns have been like rumored to be talking about Jimmy, but they literally got Jacoby Brissett, so I don't really know like what kind of an upgrade that is.
And you got Rosen as well, so
and also Jimmy's contract is kind of high if I remember correct.
I will say this, speaking of the Browns, the Rosen thing, which I think is really funny, because when he got drafted, he was really mad at the Browns for not taking him, and now he's signed with them.
He said hilarious. Like all like 11 or whatever 12 teams it was that passed on him are going to pay or something like funny. That. Yeah, and now he's on like his 4th team in 5 years. Yeah, but teams that could get Jimmy G. I know like I said, the Browns are rumored. I hope that does not happen. But also all of these other teams that we just talked about that have battles, I really don't like. If Seattle is trying to tank, they're not going to make any move. I don't think. Pittsburgh, I mean, they just drafted Pickett, so I don't think they're going to go and trade for a guy.
What about the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, are they really going to go with Davis Mills? Like, that's
my question.
I mean, there's no dispute about who the quarterback is, but also Davis Mills, like. So
I was thinking
maybe that is.
I mean, I was even thinking, I've heard rumors about this. I don't think it's going to happen, but does he go down to Tampa Bay? Does he head back to Tampa Bay, sit behind Tom Brady? I know Jimmy G wants to start, and I know that because I think he's been really frustrated. Does he do that, or does he go up to New England? Does he go up to New England and back up Mac Jones? Like, there's a lot, reunion. I don't know. I think Jimmy G's in a really bad spot because there's not enough openings for a veteran guy like him, because the 49ers waited so long to make a decision. If they would have made a decision way earlier, then maybe you see him get traded.
Before the Browns would have made a move to go get Jacoby or something like that. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I'm with you there.
But my question about quarterbacks, I think I want to switch real quick, is speaking of quarterbacks, since we're on the quarterback topic, what do you think of Murray's contract, and what do you think of the clauses inside that contract? Because I think there's been a lot of dispute on this that I think is very misguided by a lot of people and experts that I know me and you always watch, but I think I don't think they understand the whole team side of things. It's the same thing with Zion Williamson, kind of the same idea. What are your thoughts on the new contract? First, I think it's crazy. And also, what are your thoughts on the clauses?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, Kyler Murray has a career losing record. He's never thrown 30 touchdowns in a season, and he's never won a playoff game. So like all of those to me, like, are very confusing why they would give him $230 million. Like,
no, they didn't get it wasn't all guaranteed though.
But you still are gonna, over like 4 or 5 years or whatever, give him $230 million. So I don't really see how he's earned that. Like, you could at least argue Deshaun Watson has won a playoff game and has thrown over 30 TDs, over 4,000 yards in the season. These are things that Kyler just hasn't done. So
do you think, though,
in terms of money,
do you think it's the potential that they're signing? Is it like the Zion thing where it's like we can't lose this guy? Or is it like, oh, we don't know what to do. We've never had a very good player before. We got to figure out what to do.
I think a little bit of that, but they also could be thinking like, if they wait too long, then like the next QB contract is going to be so big. And then that means that they're going to either have to like have Kyler match that, or even give more than that once he like finally does earn it. So they might just be like into this situation, kind of like Zion, where it's like, okay, well, we've seen him improve like from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. Like, that all is true. But and like I said, in terms of like everything he's done in the league so far, like, it doesn't command this. And maybe they're just trying to avoid a situation like what Dallas had with Dak Prescott, right? Like, they just kept trying to tag him and avoid like giving him the long-term deal. And then eventually they just had to like shell out the money. But I still don't think it was exactly what Dak was looking for. So maybe both sides kind of wanted that. But to get to the clause discussion, if you're going to, once again, give a guy $230 million, like the Pelicans, we're going to give $180 million to Zion Williamson. I mean, if you're going to invest that kind of money, I think it's fair to say, like, you got to take care of yourself, Zion. Like, don't get over 300 pounds. And
Exactly.
if you're giving this much money to Kyler, you want to be like, okay, we want you to like be doing some independent study here, like outside of like team meetings, but also at the same time, 4 hours independently outside, like that averages out to like 40 minutes a day. And the joke everybody's making is like 4 hours. You mean like what Tom Brady does on his own in a day, or like just all these other established
Yeah.
like veteran quarterbacks that like you just can't, you got to kick them out of the film room. And it's like, this is what we're demanding Kyler. Like, it's funny to include that because of how low it is, but it's also at the same time, like, why is this racist? Why is this like wrong to want your quarterback to like be doing homework on his own? Because you're investing this much, like you should have some expectations.
Yeah, and I think it's protecting your investment, right?
100%.
Josh, if you put money into a bank or you put it into a company, you want to make sure what you're putting your money into is going to come out and do something with it, right? Or you put money into a car, you want to make sure the thing runs, right? You don't want the thing breaking down. Like, my biggest issue with this is everyone coming out and saying they can say whatever they want. It's racist, it's whatever. Like, okay, whatever. You have your own opinion. That's their opinion. That's fine with me, right? Like, it's okay. But my issue is that none of it is racist in anything, because it's not diminishing who he is. They're just saying, hey, maybe you could do a little bit better at this, or hey, maybe you can add this to it. Like, if like I'm just so confused by all this backlash with it. Like, and my question is this Murray's team putting this out there, or is this, just people picking up on it? And that's my other thing, is like, I hate contracts are so public sometimes, because it's not fair to the player, it's not fair to the team to just have everything just kind of thrown out there. But that's my thoughts. If you have anything on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much just laid him out. I don't think he earned that 230 million, but I also don't think the Cardinals are crazy for
No.
like asking of their $230 million investment to
Hey,
put
just
this
put
much
up a little
time
much in
into the
40
team on
minutes a
his own.
day. That's all they're
Yeah,
asking. 40 minutes a
yeah,
day. Like, it's nuts.
exactly.
But so I think Deshaun Watson might have just started a gate of overwhelming overpaying quarterbacks.
Overpaying quarterbacks that
Oh my
didn't earn
goodness.
it.
Like, I'm feel bad for the Ravens. What are they going to pay Lamar Jackson?
What is it going to take to keep
Like,
Lamar? Yeah.
what are they going to have to pay the man? Like, so these are the things I'm starting to like think, like, man, I'm kind of glad the Browns got Deshaun when they did, even though they did pay all that money, because who knows what they would cost in a few years. I know Josh isn't, but I'm just saying, I'm just being devil's advocate here. But anyways,
Yeah,
Josh, that's my thought on the QBs.
that is, yes. And I think we can finish up this whole entire QB discussion with year two QBs, the sophomore
Ooh,
year guys. We had
ooh,
5 quarterbacks drafted round one
yep,
last year, right? With Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. And
crazy.
4 of the 5 were starters last year. I mean, we saw Trey Lance throw a couple passes
Mm-hmm.
last year in Jimmy's like absence due to injuries, I believe, but all 5 of them are going to be starters this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen enough from 4 of the 5. As I said, we still haven't really seen a lot of Trey Lance. But my question, Ben,
Yes.
and the topic I'd like to discuss is who can take the biggest jump from year one to year two? Maybe not who's going to have the best sophomore season, but just who's going to take that biggest jump. Like, I think in
Mm.
terms of numbers, Mac Jones was the highest performer
Mm-hmm.
last year.
Yeah, yeah,
But to me, in my opinion, I don't think that he really is going to take that big of a step into year
yeah,
two, because to me, like, he's already reached like more than what I thought he could. And I don't really
yeah.
know how much more there is for him to be able to do. Whereas on the other hand, I think somebody like Justin Fields, if he only had the coaching around him, and if the Bears would like try to get receivers, like his number one receiver is a guy that they trade a 7th round pick for with N'Keal Harry right now, I feel like. But and then on the other hand, like Trey Lance didn't even start last year. So I feel like he could kind of like just come out and boom, because he's got guys like Deebo Samuel, who they just re-signed, and George Kittle, and a solid defense out there. But before I say too much of what I think, let's hear what you think. Who could maybe take that big step this season?
Yeah, I was gonna say Justin Fields, but I forgot he plays in Chicago, so
He plays in
that's not
Chicago.
happening.
They hired a defensive head coach. They didn't try to
Yeah,
get any
I'm
receivers. So
sorry.
I feel like it can't be
You
him, but
know,
it should be him if the Bears were like, if they knew anything about running a football team.
my uncle Bob is a big Bears fan, so I know he wants him to work out. And I'm a Buckeye fan, so obviously I want to see Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields is the most talented quarterback out of that group.
I think so too. Like
the most talented easily.
I'm not a Buckeye fan, but I love Justin Fields.
I mean, he's a great person too, which makes it even better. And I think, again, if under any other circumstance, any other team, even if Justin Fields played on the freaking Texans or the stinking, any other, even the Browns, right? Like I would think, that would be amazing, right? But I'm going to have to say Trevor Lawrence because of two factors. One, because he has a brand new head coach. And as much as I love Urban Meyer as a High State coach, I know you loved him as a Florida coach. The man just wasn't cut out to coach the NFL.
He could not handle the league.
No,
it's not made for everybody.
He was too old school. He's too old school.
Not there.
He was too old school. So I would say Trevor Lawrence because I think one, obviously the new coach, and I think two, I feel like he's going to have a better feel of the game. I felt like there was so much chaos with the organization last year. He didn't have a chance to feel the game, if you know what I mean. He didn't really have a chance to be back there and feel comfortable. He's going to have, I think, some healthy backs. Etienne, I believe, is going to be healthy, which, his former college running mate, right? The receiving core, it's good-ish, I think. Their line play, we'll see what happens. Hopefully they have better offensive line. But yeah, and the defense should be, I think, better. I'm just interested to see, will he take care of the ball and will he not get injured? Those are my two big worries for him. But again, I think Trevor Lawrence for me is going to make the biggest jump. And I agree with you on Mac Jones. I think there's not much of a big leap. I think he's still going to have a good year. I just think I don't know if there's that much big of a leap. But yeah, I would have to say, I would love to say Justin Fields with all my heart, but I can't because he plays in freaking Chicago. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones very well could have the best sophomore season, but it's just not going to be as big of a jump, I feel like. And his tiny jump could still put him at a spot that's better than a big jump for Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, so I think Mac isn't going to take too big of a leap from what he did last year. Trey Lance, I think San Francisco is kind of feeling pressure to start him because of everything they gave up to trade up to get him. I personally don't think Trey Lance is all that. It's going to be interesting. I think he's set up to succeed the most, though. I don't
think he played. I think there was a difference between him and Carson Wentz. I think the difference between those two is Carson Wentz had much more experience. I believe Trey Lance has just
Trey Lance had 1 year starting experience,
and then he took time. Like Trey Lance, I felt like yes, he was a first round pick, but was he a top 10 pick, top 15 pick? We'll have to see. Like, we haven't seen enough of him. Like, I barely even got to see his tape in college. I had to freaking go on YouTube to find tape of him. Right? He played at North Dakota State. No offense to North Dakota State. You're amazing at the D2 level. Not D2 level. FCS. Sorry about offended all the fans out there. Wait, where are they? Never mind. So I think Trey Lance could, like you said, be that guy. I think getting Jimmy G out of the door, I think helps him in that way. But the question with Trey Lance is, will he be able to read a defense at the NFL level? That is my biggest concern. I know he can make the passes. I know he has the athleticism. Can he consistently, when they start throwing, hey, we're going to throw 4 linemen out there, we're going to blitz 4 plus an edge guy, like, right? Or plus like a corner or something like that. Is he going to be able to read that? Is he going to be able to audible out of things? What makes, Josh, I know you can answer this. What made Ben Roethlisberger? What made Tom Brady? What made Peyton Manning? What made, Phillip Rivers? What made all these guys so successful? They could read a defense like a book from back to front to back. And I think that's going to be the test. It's a test for all these guys. But I think the other ones, we've seen it already. Like Justin Fields, hey, he still needs to work on that a little bit. Trevor Lawrence, same thing. Mac Jones, same thing. But Trey Lance, we haven't seen anything. You're going to throw him out there week 1. He really better get a good grab on this in this offseason during the preseason.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the fact that he really didn't do anything last year and the fact that he has like the best supporting cast around him, I feel like he's set up to take the biggest jump, but I just don't think he will. I'm actually going to go ahead with you and say it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. But first, I'll just recap on what I think of Zach Wilson real quick. I just don't think he's that guy. I think the Jets made a mistake taking him second overall.
He's made some interesting moves.
He's made some very interesting moves, and he's been in the headlines for like all the wrong reason. But we do love the Jets draft. We think that Jets are doing all the right things. I just personally don't think Zach Wilson's that guy. I think the Jets made a mistake taking him second overall. But Trevor Lawrence.
Dude's a playboy.
This is what Trevor Lawrence did last year, Ben. He threw 3,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. I feel like in terms of taking the biggest leap it's going to be very easy to surpass what he did that rookie season.
Absolutely.
Without Travis Etienne, like we said, one of his favorite teammates at Clemson, in a culture that just was not good, led by Urban Meyer. Now he has a new head coach. Now he's got Etienne healthy. They went out and definitely overpaid for some receiving help with Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. But it is an upgrade, and they still have Laviska Shenault there, who they drafted a few years ago. So I'm going to go ahead and agree with you that Trevor Lawrence is going to take the biggest leap from year 1 to year 2 out of last year's 5 first-round quarterbacks.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And going back to Zach Wilson, I just never got the guy, right? Like he reminds me of the kid. Okay, I'm not trying to be mean, but he reminds me of the kid in high school that like I didn't want to hang around because I felt like he's going to be a bad influence. Like I feel like that's what Zach Wilson
It's very like, now that like we've seen him in the NFL a little bit more, it's very like interesting how he even got into BYU with like how strictly religious they are. Like Notre Dame, we've seen them bend the rules like on stuff, but BYU, I didn't think that like they were like that.
No, and it's just if you don't know what we're talking about, we're not going to talk about it because I don't want to give him glory for any of it. But but I'm sure you can find it. Like the headlines are everywhere about it. But I just think with Zach Wilson is like, again, I don't know if he's proven enough. And also it's the Jets. Like we all know the Jets can be the most talented team in the NFL and they'll find a way to trip over the bomb and land on it. Right. Like that's what I feel like they are sometimes. So I would have to say, like, yeah, I agree with you with Trevor Lawrence. I think also with Trevor Lawrence too, is I think he's built like a winner, right? He wins. That's what he's known to do. And I think he hates, like, if you listen to what he talked about last year, he hated the fact they were
his
losing.
loss with the Jags, like that first week was like the first time that he's lost like since
like high school, wasn't it?
A very long time.
Yeah. So I think
the first regular season loss.
Yeah,
because he did lose
to
Ohio State. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
Regular season game. Yeah, that was like his first regular season loss since high school.
So yeah, so I think, and it's the same with Justin Fields. I think, look, let's say if the tables were turned, and let's say Justin Fields had a good offensive coach, they had receivers around him, he's built as a winner too. Like I think Justin Fields, if the Bears don't get it together, if you're Justin Fields, you better walk after year 4. Like you better, or year 5 or whatever, you better walk. Because if they're not going to, like, you're going to get so beat up by year 5 that are you really going to want to stay there for another 5 years? I would love to see him in a Browns uniform. I'm just saying, hey, Deshaun, I'm interested to see how you're going to do. But if Justin Fields is out there, I would take Justin Fields. But yeah, and I think the one thing you have with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields is 2 things. You're never going to have off-field problems. I say that now.
I agree with that.
I don't think that's changing, but what I'm saying is you're never going to have off-field problems. And Mac Jones, I believe those 3 guys, you're not going to have that locker room scariness of like, oh, what's going to happen when they go out on the night. And so I believe, especially with Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, you kind of hear their story, their story. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So those are my thoughts on who is going to be the best fast riser.
Those are also very bold of you to assume that Mac Jones, who has 2 college DUIs, is going to be just fine and nobody to worry about, Ben. But had to take a little dig there at Mac because I didn't like him at Alabama. But would you like to kind of bridge into another quarterback situation going on in Cleveland, Ben, and just discuss the Cleveland Browns and the situation that is the suspension of Deshaun Watson?
Josh, I thought, as Browns fans, when we had that nice playoff run 2 years ago during COVID, I was here in Hungary and I was enjoying it. I was literally crying after we won the playoff game. And it was like 4 a.m. I was so tired, right? I had work the next day. I thought, I'd finally hit a moment when I could just be like, I'm proud to be a Browns fan. I am proud to put on that uniform.
Just seeing the direction, like I literally went on my YouTube channel and predicted they would face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl the next season.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like that's the thing is I remember being so hyped to this past year. And again, there was injuries and, you could say little things like that, but also they didn't run the ball. Their defense didn't play the greatest at times. And at that time, you're like, hey, this is a team that's only a few pieces away from being a Super Bowl contender. Truly. You get back to the running game. You get maybe some more wide receiver help. Amari Cooper, great trade. Love it. He's going to be a guy that I think could be consistent. The defense just needed to add a few pieces. You need to bring Clowney back. You did. But then you go out and do that deal, which, out of us two, you've been more harsh on than I have. I've been kind of like, hey, let's wait and see. We'll see what happens. But now that you traded Mayfield, didn't get a first-round pick, didn't get much of really anything for him, and now you face him week 1, which we all know as Browns fans could be just a death waiting to happen. We all know how that usually goes. But this is what I'll say.
We know what the narrative is going to be if the Browns lose that game.
Exactly. But after all saying all that, I'll say this. I've been very disappointed on how the Browns have went from being that like Cinderella darling team a few years ago of like the story of coming out of 0-16 and 1-15 to where they were. And now I feel like we're now the villains of NFL because we signed a guy that we didn't like. First off, don't know if we really needed him. Second off, you gave up literally every house you own. And then on top of that, you still don't know the complete story of what's going on. Now, he's not been proven guilty. So y'all can shut up out there that keep saying he's guilty. We don't know what he's guilty of because he was proven not guilty. So I'm just going to leave that out there. All that being said, I am just, it's hard for me to sit here and be excited about Browns football this year when I feel like we're the villains of the NFL now. So that is my summary. I want to hear your take and then we'll get into the discussion on this.
Yeah, the villain talk, like, I feel like that's so stupid because you could probably pin that on any team if you wanted to.
Yeah,
like, let's just look in our division, for example. The Bengals have Joe Mixon, who like punched his girlfriend in the face, was like spending a little bit of jail time, I believe. Yeah, so, and that was proven. Yeah, not to mention they've also signed some guys that have done some terrible stuff off the field, like Pac-Man Jones. And I mean, you can even bring up Vontaze Burfict being a dirty player, even though I think some of that was a little like overblown, but the Bengals could be villains. Ben Roethlisberger, Pittsburgh Steelers,
Ray Lewis.
He was, and Ray Lewis. Yes. So like just in the division, it's like, you really want to like have this discussion because we got receipts. We got,
of course,
we got history. Yes. But so that's what I feel.
And the Ravens stole our team.
Yeah. We haven't gotten over that, have we, in Cleveland? But yeah. So the villain talk is just silly to me. You could like throw that narrative on any team in the league if you wanted to, but yeah, so have we talked about the 6-game suspension initially?
No,
yet?
We have not.
We have not. Okay, yeah.
No.
So it did come out that it was going to be 6 games, which if he didn't do it, why is he getting 6 games? And if he did do it, 6 seems kind of light, especially when we're giving Calvin Ridley an entire season for like gambling, right? So the 6th game, like it seemed like it was going to be okay. The Players Association wasn't going to like dispute it. But the NFL has decided that they were going to appeal it because apparently it just wasn't enough. Deshaun Watson has tarnished the image of the league. And now the NFL has to prove to its fan base that it cares about women and takes domestic violence very, very seriously. And so we have the situation now where we are trying to bury Deshaun Watson when we literally have like sexual misconduct going on in the Washington Commies organization. And Robert Kraft is like literally doing the same stuff as Deshaun Watson. He's not getting a slap on the wrist. And Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, is literally losing draft picks and being suspended games for tampering. And like, what are we doing here? Like, there's just so much inconsistency with the way that the league punishes and how it handles things that I just really don't want anything to do with it right now, Ben. Like, there's so much just hypocrisy.
No, and I totally agree with you. I think it's so ridiculous that the richer you are, the lesser you get penalized. It just seems how it is right now.
It's like your dad said last week, like the owners run the league. So naturally nothing's going to happen to them and they're going to stick up for each other and like bury things that each other's doing.
But this is my thing though, right? Like my question is, what do the other owners think of the Haslams? Because the Haslams brought this on. They're the ones that kind of signed him and brought him into the fold in Cleveland. But I'm going to say this, Josh, and I've said this, I don't know how many times. You probably could go back and count every episode that we've talked about Deshaun Watson. I've said it. The man was not proven guilty. And I say this, and I'll say it 1,000 times. Unless you're proven guilty, why are you getting punished? I thought that's the society we live in. If you're not proven guilty, I get it. He's done some things that we allegedly are happening. He's settled out of court, all these different things. But when it did go to court, 2 juries said, we don't see anything.
Right. So, like, he's a weirdo, but
yeah, he's weird.
That's all we know. Yeah.
But my thing is in this though. Yes, he hasn't really come out and said, hey, apologize for his actions or whatever. I get that. All this thing. But the NFL, first off, it's not your job to determine who has like tarnish your league. Like the judge literally came out and said, hey, yes, he did some things. Yes, this does break the code of conduct, whatever you guys y'all call it nowadays. And he gets 6 games. If you're the NFL, you should take it, because you know what's going to Deshaun Watson going to do? He's going to go on over to his lawyers and say, hey, when they start appealing, and if I get a 12-game suspension or a, whatever game, I'm going to sue them. Does the NFL really want to do this? Because first off, Deshaun Watson's already sit out a whole year. He's already not played a whole year, plus these next 6 games. That's a total of what? 23 games? It's
going to be 23 games.
Yeah, 23 games. So you're wanting then to add another one on. So add another, 11 games. So 34 games. So you want this man to sit out 34 games. To me, just seems a little like they're trying to be police, the judge, executioner. And this is not the place for it. Sports are where we get away. When people mess up, you give them a second. That's what America is.
And I don't think anybody else's like employers do this, like how the NFL does. Like if your boss and my boss, like if we don't get convicted, like nothing's going to happen. Like
but the thing is you might get a game suspension. Like if you're the NFL player, you might get fined or whatever. Like I'm okay with that. If you're like saying, hey, those actions did kind of hurt people around you or hurt other people, I get that.
Yeah. And as much as I hated the 6th game, it was like, well, fine. If you want to like pin it on that, he like represented the league in a bad way or whatever the heck for being weird off the field, then whatever. Because they were talking like a full season or 12 games.
Why is Robert Kraft still own the Patriots?
If we're gonna like let Robert Kraft and Dan Snyder and like all these guys like run around and do this, why is Deshaun like the only one getting punished?
Yeah, like exactly. Just like you said, like you hate the deal that they did for Deshaun, but it's not like we hate the guy. Like, in fact, I think Deshaun is like, this is the perfect way for him to prove himself. He gets out of Houston. He gets in a place where he can make a difference in the community. He can truly like go out there and like try to make a difference. Like this is the thing. He's going to be hated for some time, if not for a couple years. But we've seen what happens. Look at Ben Roethlisberger. Things went bad with him. By the end of his career, everyone loves Ben Roethlisberger. And we know personally he went through a lot of life changing. Hopefully that can happen to Deshaun as well. But what we're saying here on this show, and I want people to listening to understand, we're not condoning what Deshaun did if he did it. But again, we don't know. It's allegations. People, listen, it's allegations. There was nothing he did that was proven in court. And that to me two times. That to me is where we needed to stop being the judge. The jury found nothing twice. The NFL suspended him. That's where it should have stopped. Let him serve his time. Get on with it.
Stop. And the Players Association, the Players Association didn't appeal this either. They were like,
yeah, let's do it. Whatever.
This is cool. Yeah. I feel like honestly, both sides could have appealed it. The Players Association could have been like, we're appealing this because he shouldn't have gotten anything. You even like proved that NFL that you have zero evidence, and the NFL like is deciding, you know what? This isn't enough. We're gonna we had this judge like go through all this stuff, and we think everything that she said is nonsense.
And now they're like, oh well, Roger Goodell's not doing it. He's getting a former AG. I'm like, yeah, a guy who's been on Roger Goodell's side for the last 10 years, right? Like, so this is Roger Goodell's. Like, he's gonna make the choice he wants to make. Like, I really feel that way. If he feels, this is the thing. What have we learned, Josh, in professional sports nowadays? If there's enough pressure from the public, what's going to happen? They're going to cave. And that's what happens. And I think I'm very worried I think Deshaun as a person, like, is he ever going to have a chance to like fix what he's doing or like heal or ask for forgiveness when all it is like, hey, you're going to miss 2 years of football, maybe even 3 years. Who knows? At the end of the day, my stance has always been, I disagree with if he did do this, it's wrong. He should be punished. If he was guilty, Josh and I would be the first ones on here to say, yes, he deserves to get whatever is coming to him. But we don't even know what happened. We are just assuming based on allegations from women who they could be 100% true. And if they are, I'm sorry. Like, I feel bad for them in that moment. But at the same time, man, if we're just going to be going off words of people without finding evidence,
that's dangerous.
Everyone in this world should be scared out of their mind, because we should be going to some old 60 years ago in Eastern Europe, where I'm at right now, Central Eastern Europe, and you'd be finding what that was.
Yeah, it can be crazy. There's also drama around other players on the Browns that have
Oh
been
boy.
in criminal situations before
Yes.
that are no longer in those situations. They've moved on and they're better people. But Kareem Hunt is
Oh
in a
boy.
situation right now
Yeah.
in the running back room where Nick Chubb has been paid. Dearness Johnson has been not necessarily
Not
paid, but
paid, but
extended.
yeah, extended.
Demetric Felton is under contract. They drafted Ford from Cincy. So now the running back room is kind of full, and he's this fifth guy.
Yeah.
And he's wanting to be paid for his role as the backup for
Yeah.
being like a top 10 to 15 running back in the league. And the Browns don't
Kinda
really
said no.
have an interest, it seems like, or even the money
Yeah.
to be able to afford Kareem Hunt what he's asking for. And so he is going to sit out of team drills for now and hold out. And I think he even requested a trade today, if I remember correct.
Supposedly. It said privately. So
He's looking for either an extension for what he's done
looking
or
at
he's looking to
leverage.
get out.
This is
He
called
wants money.
leverage.
This is leverage, yeah. And I don't really know how much of it he has because the Browns seem to my head to have moved on from him already with the drafting of Ford, the extending of Johnson, the extension of Chubb. And now like teams already are kind of like, they don't want to pay running backs. And since Kareem's a backup, I feel like he's going to like end up out.
Now, there's a lot of teams I think that could use Kareem Hunt. I think there's a lot of teams that would love to have Kareem Hunt. I mean, as a Browns fan, I mean,
he's a former leading rusher in the league. He's a rushing champ.
I loved him 2 years ago before he got injured last year. And I think that's what scared the Browns away. I said this before the show when we were just talking. I think that when this past season, I think there's a chance they were going to extend him, but then this whole like injury plague hit him. And as a running back, as you know, as soon as a running back hits an injury plague season, it's like, Oh, yeah. No.
I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey right now, back-to-back seasons of that. Saquon Barkley's dealing with that. And Derrick Henry finally got broken by Tennessee. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can stay healthy from here on out, too.
And I love Johnson. Like, he's a great.
Every time Dearness Johnson makes a start, he plays great.
Yes.
Like a seasoned vet. And rushing around 100 yards a game.
And I love Felton. Felton's one of those guys who I think can play slot. He can play as a returner. He can play as a running back. I love Felton.
Lot, yeah.
And I also like getting a 5th round pick. Like it's not really you don't really lose much with that. You get a 5th round running back, you see what happens, you go for it. Now I think we all know Chubb's the guy and Hunt knows that. So my question is, Kareem, are you really thinking the Browns are going to pay you $6-7 million to be a backup that touches the ball 15% of the time in the backfield with Chubb getting the other 85%?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen teams like the Colts gave a lot of money to Nyheim Hines, who's backing up Jonathan Taylor. We know that Taylor's going to be the starter. He's not losing that job, but Hines is kind of like,
but doesn't he do punt returning though?
He returns kicks and punts, and he's kind of like a receiver sometimes.
But Hunt doesn't do a lot of that.
Right. So I was just bringing that because we have seen like very rarely, like NFL teams hate paying even starting running backs, but the Colts just shelled out all this money to a backup running back. And it's like, okay, so it has been done before. And I mean, Kareem Hunt's even a former starter, a former rushing champ, as I said, but the injury concern for sure is there. And it's just like backup running back still. Like I wouldn't want to pay him what he's demanding.
And I think too, like if you're Stefanski, personally, I think this would help get Chubb the ball more. I think Stefanski sometimes goes, well, I need Hunt in there because of his catching.
Yeah, like third downs, it's like almost always Hunt.
Why can't we just like, I'd say my thing is get what you can for Hunt now. Because if he gets really irritated, he's not going to re-sign in the offseason, so you're going to lose him for nothing. Why not just get a 4th and a 6th from some team that needs a running back? He's on his last year of his contract. And then you still have you're 4 deep in the running back room. So I think Nick Chubb they're never going to replace Nick Chubb. If they're stupid and try to replace Nick Chubb, then they've lost me forever. Because we all know the Browns, the one thing they're known for is having, it seems like every 20, 25 years, they always have like this really good running back, right? You have like this running back every so often for the Browns. Will Nick Chubb ever be Jim Brown? I don't know. It's too early to tell. I would love him to become that, only last longer, right, than Jim Brown. But it's very interesting to see. Josh, what is your take? Do you feel like Stefanski, this is the general managers and Stefanski saying to Hunt, like, hey, you can either stick it out for this year or you're basically kind of screwed and you're going to have to play anyways if you're going to get paid?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, teams are always gonna like pay guys as less as they can, right? Like it's always something that they kind of dread, like, oh man, now we gotta pay this guy. Like it's
Yeah.
time, that extension time's coming around, and then like NFL teams are quick to cut guys, like even guys that are like in their late 20s, like that are maybe owed like a lot of money. And since not all these contracts are guaranteed, they can just kind of be like, oh, we have to pay so and so like $20 million this year. And he was like injured all last season. We can just cut him and we don't owe him any money. So being the backup running back in Cleveland with the injury, it's just, yeah, I don't think Stefanski, I mean, I think it's not like they don't want
Oh
Hunt,
yeah, of
right?
course.
Like
Yeah.
if they had their way, they would have Hunt on the deal that they have him on right now, though. So it's kind of like, well, we got this kid we just drafted from Cincy. We've seen Dearness Johnson a lot on the field, and he's totally capable. And we're paying Nick Chubb a lot of money, so maybe this is when we can finally move on from Hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be very interesting to see what happens with Hunt here. This obviously just happened as we're recording. We're recording on Sunday, so when you're listening to this, obviously it happened a couple days ago. But yeah, so I just heard this. I texted Josh. I sent him a picture. And I said, "Hey, we got to talk about this because I think it is very interesting that all this has happened at the same time that Deshaun Watson thing's happening. Poor Stefanski and poor Jacoby Brissett, who's just like, okay, am I going to have two running backs? Am I starting? Am I playing the whole season? And then you have Josh Rosen, who I just think it's funny that he's there.
He's just happy to be here.
He's just happy. But no, I think it's gonna be interesting that the Browns receivers are all getting hurt. The Browns have just become Josh, can I say this? I feel like I shouldn't say this because I felt like we were there a few years ago. Does it feel like to you, and I don't know, maybe not to you, but I sit here and I start looking at this team. I'm reading some of the things about the preseason. I'm like, this reminds me a lot of the team the year we went to the year before we went to the playoffs when we were like getting back to sort of it. And it was just, we didn't know what was happening.
Was this the Hard Knock season?
Yeah. Like this is the year I feel like it's happening. I feel like we're going back 3 years instead of progressing. I feel like we're just in this loop of like, hey, it's like, the guy with the carrot on the stick with the fishing pole, like, oh, you're almost there. You're almost there. You almost got it. Like, that's what I feel like it's like NFL is reaching data. It's like, hey, you can win a Super Bowl sometime soon. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my thoughts.
A little bit like that. And since we're talking about what we think the Browns can like the outlook on the season, let me tell you these first 6 games, which I felt like were some of the easiest on our schedule.
Yeah.
Like we go to Carolina, we host the Jets, we host the Steelers, we go to Atlanta, we host the Chargers, and we host the Patriots. Like we can go 3-3 or 4-2 in those games. I feel like with Jacoby Brissett as quarterback,
if not even better.
Yeah,
if you get a good run game and plays good defense,
right? But here's where it gets tricky. It's that 7th game. We're going to Baltimore, and we host Cincinnati. We go to Miami. We go to Buffalo. We host Tampa Bay. Then we get kind of a break here. We go to the Texans. Then we have to go to Cincinnati. We host Baltimore. We host the Saints. Like that's just such a grind from like game 7 to game 15. And then we end the season with road games at Washington and Pittsburgh. So it's like those games early on in the season, and especially those last crucial. 2, it's like you have to win.
They have to go at least 6-2 in those 8 game right there. In those 8 games.
And I know like the Browns aren't unique where it's like, oh, we have such a hard schedule. Like it's the league. Everyone's good. Everyone has a hard schedule. But when you are in even like a more competitive division like we are in with AFC North, like Baltimore and Cincinnati are looking to get back, or Cincinnati's looking to like make a run back to the Super Bowl. They made a lot of key additions. Baltimore is fully healthy now after all the injuries they had last year. Pittsburgh, I mean, I hate to like say they're going to be last place, but like it's still like they're a team that could go 7-10 or like 8-9 and like not be a bad last place team. Like it's a very good division. We have a very tough schedule, and those games, like we have to win those winnable games. I felt like in that season that we're talking about, the Hard Knock season, where like we came out and just got hit in the mouth by Tennessee week 1. Like there were just games during that season that we needed to win and we just didn't win. Yeah. Or even like it might have been the 2020 season. Like we did end up making the playoffs, but didn't we also lose to the Jets? And we had like so many guys out. We had so many guys out with COVID and stuff. And it's like, even with all those guys out, the Jets are so bad that this is still a must-win game to me. And we lost that game, but we still made the playoffs. But it's just like this season, I just feel like even more so than last year, there are 2 seasons before with the playoff team, but we just have to win those games. Like we have to be able to beat Washington. We have to be able to beat Pittsburgh both times. We have to be able to get that win against Carolina. And I mean, there's not really any breaks in there.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting this season to see what happens with the Browns as we get closer to the season starts. We'll have our own preseason preview, especially about our season preview, especially about the about where we think the Browns will finish, what we think is going to happen, our award predictions and stuff like that. So that's what we'll see with the Browns. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season for the Browns. What'd you say, Josh?
I mean, it's always kind of interesting with the Browns, right? It's so unpredictable. Some teams you kind of know what you're going to get, but with Cleveland, you just never know.
Absolutely.
You just never know. And there's also some unpredictability in the NFC West, Ben. I feel like we just mentioned how tough the AFC North is. The AFC West with the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders and the Broncos. I mean, trying to predict who finishes 1 through 4 there is just so hard because in my mind, all those teams could be in the playoffs. All of them could be capable of winning that division. And the way that I kind of look at it, though, is Kansas City has kind of been running that division the last few years. And they're the team that's kind of had some losses. Like they've lost Tyrann Mathieu. They've lost Tyreek Hill. Meanwhile, teams like the Chargers have added Khalil Mack. And the Raiders have added Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. And the Broncos just went out and got a quarterback, Russell Wilson. It's like all those 3 other teams that have been chasing the Chiefs have made very good additions. And I mean, the Chiefs, they have gotten like Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they drafted Sky Moore. So it's not like they didn't do absolutely anything in the offseason, but it's like, I really like some of these additions that those other teams made a lot better. Who out of there do you think had the most impressive offseason?
Broncos. They got their quarterback. Like I could say the Chargers, they went out and got Khalil Mack, like awesome. Like, again, he's a great player. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying, like, you got a quarterback if you're the Broncos. You finally have a guy that has proven himself. It's almost like the Peyton Manning thing all over again, right? They went out, they got their guy. Now with Russell, I think he could be there a few more years than Peyton can be. The only question I have with that is, can you build around him? Will John Elway not screw this up? That's the question, right? Like, will the Broncos turn out to be, I think the Broncos, if they play their chips right, they get maybe not this year, maybe this year they win, let's say 9 games, 10 games, right? They get to the playoffs, maybe wild card or something like that. But the next year, like, do they draft well? Do they go out and get some free agents? Do they build around Russell Wilson? Because I think that's the biggest winner, because you finally have your quarterback. With the Raiders, they already had a quarterback, so they were adding on. I don't know if the Chargers and Raiders added enough. The Raiders maybe more than the Chargers, because they added obviously Devontae Adams. But that's just my take, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like out of those teams, I feel like the Broncos finally have a quarterback, and it's the missing piece they've been missing since Peyton.
Yeah, I mean, this really does feel very similar to that Peyton Manning situation. And Denver, even since Peyton Manning has left, has just been trying to find next quarterback. Like, they've tested out Brock Osweiler. They've thrown out Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, they drafted in the first round to be the next, and he failed. And I mean, they've tried Drew Lock, and
they tried a wide receiver last year.
Yeah, I mean, that during that one stretch, they had a practice squad receiver who used to play like quarterback in high school that they had to throw out because of so many other injuries and guys that were in quarantine. But yeah, the Broncos just have been trying since Peyton Manning has left to fill that quarterback role. And I mean, they went out and made that trade. And I think it's going to prove very valuable, because I saw the other day the Broncos were 3rd in the NFL last year in wide receiver separation, like getting away from defensive coverage. But since Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater were their quarterbacks, like, they really weren't able to take advantage of that. Like, so we know they have talent at receiver with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. And I mean, sadly, we just saw Tim Patrick tear his ACL in camp, so he's out for the season. So that is one guy that they won't have. But Sutton and Jeudy and KJ Hamler's coming back from an injury last year. Their running backs game is solid with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, who they drafted from North Carolina, looking like a stud last year as a rookie. Williams was. So
Fant.
Noah Fant actually was in that Drew Lock trade
That is
to
true. That is
Seattle.
right. Yeah, that is right.
Yeah,
They
so
don't have
I'm not
any.
sure.
So
I'm not sure who tight end is at the moment, but I mean, there's offensive weapons around, so I don't think Russell Wilson is really falling off in terms of what he had in Seattle. It's just going to be like, I think Denver is a pretty well-run organization when they get that quarterback right, because they're doing all like these other things correct, like they're getting all these other players right, but they just haven't been able to nail that quarterback. So, yeah, I Denver's definitely going to be one, but Chargers, I mean, they were a team that just missed the playoffs by one game last year, and maybe if defense is a little bit better, things are a little bit different. But they went out and got Khalil Mack, and the Raiders, like now that they have Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller and I mean Josh Jacobs, like in terms of skill positions, I mean that has to rank like top 3, top 4 in the league. So it's very hard for me to like overlook any of these. But I think you made a great point about Denver, like. And I agree with you. Denver seems to like get everything right, except that quarterback. And when they do get that quarterback right, like I mean, they're a team to be reckoned with. But and I've heard some other people like our guys over at the Daily Wire. Jay Crane really likes the Chargers. He thinks they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. Justin Herbert's going to take that next step. So, I mean, really, any of these teams
Jake,
seem
come
capable.
on the show and debate me about that.
We would love to debate Jake about this if you are listening. But yeah, so all of these teams, I really kind of lean towards the Raiders. There might be a little bit bias in there. I just feel like they really overachieved last year for the situation that they were in. The one thing that concerns me about the Raiders, though, is the guy they hired at head coach, Josh McDaniels. I haven't really liked Josh in many situations that he's been a head coach.
Josh, why don't you like yourself?
Do not insult me by saying Josh McDaniels is myself, Ben. Come on. But I mean, Josh McDaniels has been a head coach in Denver. We just talked about. I mean, you could say that he did more than what he should have with Tim Tebow as the starting quarterback over there, but still ultimately unsuccessful and fired. He was hired as the Colts' next head coach, and then he dipped on that opportunity, which, yeah, that was a totally weird situation, why he would have done that. So I guess the situation in Las Vegas is exactly what he's looking for, and we're going to have to see how he works with Derek Carr and like all those guys. I don't really know what to expect, but it's just Josh McDaniels always like leaves a bad taste in my mouth as a head coach. So I really don't like that.
It's about people named Josh. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, man. Something about Josh. Yeah. But that's my only concern about them.
Oh man.
I'm trying to think of anything else here. Like, I guess the Chargers just always seem to be that team historically that is so close, but can't ever put together. Like they've missed the playoffs being first in total offense and defense. They've been knocked out in the first round of the playoffs by being the number 1 seed under Marty Schottenheimer back when LaDainian Tomlinson was the running back. And like last year, even like the timeout situation that their head coach called against the Raiders, which was like ultimately a playoff game because the winner of that game got to the playoffs. Like it was just so weird. Like there's always something that keeps the Chargers from being totally what they're capable of.
What can we say?
Yeah. And I mean, even flip-flop to the Chiefs. Like, I mean, as good as Tyreek Hill is, they've gotten some like more mid-range guys to like replace him.
And they still have Patrick freaking Mahomes.
And Patrick Mahomes is still there, yeah. So it's like you can't overlook Patrick Mahomes, but
Travis Kelce is still there.
And Travis Kelce's still there, yeah. But I mean, the Chiefs overall, like they've gone from winning the Super Bowl to losing the Super Bowl to AFC Championship games. So it's like they're on like a slow trend down. Like, I mean, any team would love to finish where Kansas City's finishing, right? Like they're not sucking by any means.
I would love the Browns to be where they're at.
Yeah. They just seem like on a slow trend down. And now they have, a weaker overall team on paper. So that's my concern with them. So if I had to go 1 through 4, Ben, I might go Denver 1, Vegas 2, and Chiefs 3, and then that leaves the Chargers 4. It's like, but then it's like you're gonna put the Chargers 4. It's like, oh, I know, like I can't do that. But
it's easy. It's Chiefs. Are we talking about like the overall ranking?
We're talking first, second, third, fourth. How are they gonna finish in the division?
Oh, easily. It's Chiefs, Denver, Raiders, Chargers. Chargers are going to be last. Absolutely. Jake Crane, do you hear me? Yeah, debate me. Dare you. Come on the show. Dare you.
I got to set that up. We got to try to set it up at least. We got David on. Maybe we can pull some strings. But yeah, so we seemed. I mean, the only difference was our first and third, because you got KC at first and I got them at third, and I got Denver at first. You got them at second.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we both have like Vegas finishing behind Denver. So yeah, so it's such an unpredictable division. It's going to be the one that's probably going to be the most entertaining to watch this year. But that is that discussion, Ben. I would like to wrap up today our preseason discussion with maybe one team that everybody is maybe too high on, and maybe another team that everybody is too low on that we're overlooking. So I'll start with a team that I think everybody is overlooking because it's fun for me to talk, and that's the Saints. And I think everybody's overlooking the Saints.
This is the thing. I knew you were going to say this.
Saints, yes.
I knew you were going to say the Saints.
The Saints are like low-key my sleeper team. And I think everybody's overlooking them because they're in the division with Tampa Bay, and also Jameis Winston's their quarterback. And let me just say this. While Jameis Winston had that season with 30 interceptions, if you take that season away, he's still kind of had kind of problems with interceptions, like 18, 17, like higher than what you'd want. But really, he's been a decent quarterback. Like the yards have always been there. The touchdowns have always been there. He had the LASIK eye surgery too, and we really haven't seen him as a starter to full capacity with the LASIK eye. And last year when Drew Brees was out, he went 5-2 as a starter. Now let me throw in the fact that he's getting Michael Thomas back, who missed all of last season. He added Chris Olave in the draft. He's also going to have Jarvis Landry that they signed. And Marquez Callaway is still here, who's probably much better suited to be a fourth receiver instead of a wide receiver one. And we'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara, because a lot of people forgot he got arrested this offseason, but there hasn't been any suspension talk with him. So, he's going to be a weapon out of the backfield for him as well. And the only concern I would have on the Saints offensively is like how things are going to handle with play calling, because Sean Payton's not there anymore. And they also have to figure out how to replace Teron Armstead, who's one of the best left tackles in the league. But I flip over to the defensive side, and they add Tyrann Mathieu as like a safety back home in New Orleans, a former LSU Tiger. Like, I really think a lot of people are overlooking the Saints, and it's going to cost them. But am I crazy about the Saints, Ben? No. Or do you have another team that you think might be being slept on a little bit more than the Saints?
So Saints were like one of my choices for sure. I think that's just obvious. My man Michael Thomas is out there, and Chris Olave. Obviously. I would say, right. I was going to say the Bears. I'm kidding. I was never going to say the Bears. I'm sorry. I just had to. I'm going to say this might shock you, Josh. This actually might shock. This might shock a lot of people, because if you know me personally, you know how much I hate this team with a passion. I'm going to have to say the Cowboys. I'm going to say that this is why, right? This is why.
Well, I know exactly why I'm overlooking the Cowboys. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost, Michael Gallup's injured now. Like all these things. Yes.
I get that. Right. But they still, like, one, on the defense side of the ball, they just signed Anthony Barr, which I think is a very good signing. Micah Parsons is going to, the defense is going to be solid. Right. Like, we know the defense is going to be solid. They have a cornerback who, they're okay. Their DBs are up in the air right now. I think they're still fixing things. But this is the thing. You have Zeke Elliott. If Zeke Elliott is on, just like you were talking about Jameis Winston, when Zeke Elliott is on and he's not injured or got bad play calling or whatever, Zeke Elliott is one of the best running backs in the NFL, hands down. Right. At least in my mind. I think you have Dak Prescott, who's sometimes confuses me when I watch him play football. But I think the Cowboys for me are a team that I think they get overlooked because it's the Cowboys. I just think, honestly, people just are like, it's the Cowboys. They're going to screw it over. If you talk to Stephen A. Smith, he's going to let you know what he feels about the Cowboys. But I think the Cowboys in general, I think defensively, they're going to be very solid. And I think if they can get the offense, if CeeDee Lamb, if some of these guys then get a good tight end game, if they get Zeke Elliott back, I think this team could be very, very good on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, I think you have Micah Parsons, who's a freak. I don't know if you've ever seen Micah Parsons play. He's a freak.
Big fan of Micah Parsons. I thought that the Cowboys got an absolute steal with him. Like, what was it? Pick? Like,
it was in the teens, I believe.
Yeah, like he shouldn't have fallen out of top 10.
So I would say Cowboys, but my runner up behind the Cowboys was, I actually had the Broncos, which I just previously talked about. I think the Broncos are right there, that I think is another team that people are overlooking because they're just the Broncos, but they forget that they did add a pretty good quarterback. So right now I'm going to say the Cowboys and then the Broncos as a team that overlooked. Again, I was going to go with the Bears. No, I'm kidding. I would never go with the Bears. I'm sorry. I'm going to run that into the ground.
Hey, I will say this. I will say this about Dallas. They're in a much easier division to win than the Saints are right now.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that this
too.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the Saints are going to win that division. I just think they're going to get in as a wild card, and people might just be overlooking them just because it is Tampa's division. But Dallas most definitely can win that division. Like, they're going up against Washington, the Giants. And I mean, I think we both like the Eagles, like how they handled this offseason. Like, they made some pretty good draft picks.
But I just don't know. I don't believe in Hurts yet. I can't.
And I also feel like the Eagles, like the Cowboys, have been a team that has underachieved lately. Like, the situation with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, like since the Super Bowl, has just been, they just got to get a couple more things right. But yes, Dallas definitely could be a team that people are overlooking just because of everything that they lost. And it's like, and they're supposed to get better after that. But yes, for sure. So moving on to teams that maybe people are a little bit too high on. I'm going to have to go. For this one. I think it's the Miami Dolphins.
I think did not see that coming at all.
I think people are way too high on the Miami Dolphins. And let me tell you why everybody loves the Miami Dolphins. They did go out and get a guy named Tyreek Hill. They went out and got a guy like Teron Armstead, who I just mentioned, one of the best left tackles in the league. Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers in the league. They also added a couple other underrated pieces like Raheem Mostert and Sony Michel for the backfield. Mohamed Sanu, another like veteran receiver. Melvin Ingram. And they also have Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips entering year 2, who were very solid rookies last year on the offense and the defensive side. But the reason I ultimately do not believe in the Dolphins is, 1, Tua Tagovailoa, and 2, Mike McDaniel. Tua has needed to be bailed out of so many situations already. Like, they tried to force him in to be the starter as a rookie, and they had to keep benching him, bringing Ryan Fitzpatrick back in. The defense has also been very, very strong and bailed him out several other times. Brian Flores, now out at his head coach, who kind of like got more out of that team than I think should have, because like, as we just found out this week, the Dolphins were found guilty of not only tampering, but also tanking, like trying to lose games. And Flores didn't want anything to do with that. So he was trying to win with a roster that wasn't capable of winning. And now we have Mike McDaniel, who's a first-year head coach who hasn't called plays before. That was all Kyle Shanahan. And I really don't know how that team's going to look. Like, I mean, I hear everybody likes Mike McDaniel kind of, he seems really friendly with the media. They like him, but just as I always wonder, like, how head coaches, like these guys get hired as head coaches when they got like no experience, like calling plays or like doing anything like very substantial like that. So hopefully he's a very good X's and O's guy, or like just a good kind of like CEO vibe. Maybe that's what helped him out. But between like the unknown there and with just my disbelief in Tua, not only in his ability, but also his ability to stay healthy, I just think the Dolphins are going to be a team that's going to miss the playoffs once again.
I did not see you going to the Dolphins. I can tell you this, right? I was looking at a poll the other day of USA Today. They had their power rankings of teams, right? Top 10, right? Just wanted to read these out to you. They had, let's see, Rams 1, 2 Bills, 3 Bengals, 4 Packers, 5 Chiefs, 6 Ravens, 7 Buccaneers, 8 Chargers, 9 Eagles, 10 Colts. Ooh. Interesting, right? Then they had at 11 the 49ers. All right, they're above the Patriots, the Saints, the Raiders and Cowboys, and the Dolphins and the Vikings. Now,
and this was after we already knew that Trey Lance was going to be the quarterback?
Yes. So this is my thing, right? I could have went many ways here after I was reading this article. I could be just the normal Browns fan and just say the Bengals will never make it. They're overhyped. But I don't feel like people are overhyping the Bengals. I think people are really just saying, hey, they're going to be as good as they want to be.
I think you just see a team that went to the Super Bowl last year, and the one weakness that they had, which was offensive line, they improved.
Exactly. So I'm not going to go there. I will say the runner-up was the Packers. At 4 in this thing, where is Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to?
Yeah, I mean, right now, like, who's he throwing? He's throwing to Sammy Watkins and a rookie Christian Watson and, like, Alan Lazard.
So that's one to me that's like, okay, people just love Aaron Rodgers so much. They love him so much. And I get it. He's an amazing quarterback, but you got to win Super Bowls. That's the point of football, right?
But Ben, Rodgers has a Super Bowl.
Oh, stop it. All right. I don't care.
Over
Dude,
a decade ago.
Merry Christmas. So, anyways, that was my runner up. But ultimately, what came down to the Chargers were also runner up. I think there's no way they should be ranked 8th in the power rankings. That's Jake Crane.
Yeah, like we both think that they're going to finish 4th in that division, but I also understand kind of like why people love the Chargers.
Just stop. No way. Jake Crane, come on. And lastly, this is my thing. This is my team that I think is people are way too excited about is the 49ers. I get it. They have Nick Bosa on the defense. They have Deebo Samuel, but they have Trey Lance, a guy who's barely played a game in the last 2 years. Because even his last year in college. So Trey Lance is so unknown. I just, why are people so high up on the 49ers? It's just, I'm just so confused because I think you had someone in Jimmy Garoppolo that you could at least get through half of the year and then say, hey, okay, Trey Lance, this is your ball game. Obviously we're going to transition, but I don't know, man. I don't know what you think, but this is my thought is I just think the 49ers are people love them way too much right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what I think people see with the 49ers, and it's all those guys that you said. It's Kyle Shanahan as a head coach, and it's also the fact that they've been a very good team in this run with Kyle Shanahan, not really because of quarterback play. Like Jimmy G has won playoff games throwing 8 pass attempts a game. So as long as Trey Lance doesn't absolutely suck, I feel like they just don't rely on quarterback play too much in their offense. So if Trey Lance can even just be average, I think that we might not see as big of a drop off from Jimmy Garoppolo to him. Do I think that's going to be the case? I don't think it's going to be the case though. So I kind of am with you, especially with like we were talking about Kyler Murray, and I have said like all those things, like he hasn't done, X, Y, Z, and like had no playoff wins and all that, but they have been trending up from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. They added Hollywood Brown in the offseason. Like there's just like some improvements in Arizona that I'm a fan of. And I think that they might jump the 49ers this year and be that second team in the division. The Rams, I think, are going to win that division. And I think the 49ers might find themselves in 3rd place. And the only reason they won't finish 4th is because of how bad Seattle is. So I'm kind of with you on that. I'm surprised that they would put them that high, but I think the reason they would have is just because of how little the 49ers have relied on quarterback play.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm really interested to see how this season goes along. And yeah, it's just gonna be an interesting football season, Josh. It's gonna be an interesting one. Josh, do you have any final thoughts for today's show? Anything on the NFL world that you would like to share?
Not. I think we pretty much covered everything. I would love to see people in the comment section put a team that is overrated and underrated now, just to kind of like get a vibe of what everybody else is thinking. Because I mean, we threw out some different teams. Like I threw out the Saints and the Dolphins, and you threw out the 49ers and the Broncos. So it's like I wonder what other people are thinking. If absolutely out there, who might be overhyped and who might be underhyped.
Absolutely,
yeah, it's fun discussion as always, Ben.
It's been fun, Josh. We're back with just me and you. I feel like we have now a closer bond because we don't have that third person kind of taking up the screen. Like I feel like we can fill out the screen a little bit better. It makes it easier editing for me. I don't have to add so many names. I'm just kidding. We love our guests. And first off, I do want to say thanks to Dad last week. I didn't really get to say that last week, but he's actually back in America. It's kind of funny how that works. Yeah, thanks to him for being on last week. I will say that people were laughing at what he was saying. So I want to be honest with you. I don't, that's not me. So whatever he said, I did not script it. That is my dad. Josh, by the way, for all of you listening out there, Josh was just as shocked. If you rewatch that episode, Josh is just kind of like in awe of the things.
Like, what do I say now?
Exactly. But no, we appreciate Dad coming on, all of our guests. And again, this was the 50th episode of the Baseline Podcast. It's been a great journey. It's been a great ride. We've had some amazing guests on. I remember starting it by myself, and then now where we're at now with Josh and the way we're growing, it's just been an amazing journey. We appreciate all of you. Again, leave in the comments, leave when you started watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, and leave some of your other comments about the podcast as well. We love reading those. They're hilarious. We might disagree with you, but they're hilarious. But ultimately, we just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you've been watching this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That'll allow us to see really what's happening, what you're liking to see. If you really hated our topics today, understand, totally get it. Got it. we'll try to always adjust. We always try to grow, change things. If you'd like to see other things via on our Instagram or anything like that, go to @baseline.podcast and then also give us your ideas. You want to see shorts? Do you want to see Josh rant about analytics or anything that just shocks him, like how bad the Reds are playing? Because we all know that's just a normal thing that happens. And then ultimately, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you go ahead and give us 5 stars. Bam. I don't know why I did that. It's like a weird high five, but make sure you guys go ahead and do that. That'll allow us to get it out to more people. We've been really doing well, and we want to continue doing that. That way we can have more guests come on. That way Josh's
we aren't
job,
done, by the way. Like, we had
Yes.
an episode of just me and Ben today, but that doesn't mean that guests are not coming on.
And I will
we
also
got some
say-
more on the radar.
is that Josh, that's like his only job. Okay. That's what I pay him to do. I don't even pay him, but that's what he does. that's what he does on the show.
Eventually, once Ben has a couple bucks of YouTube revenue to pay me, that's what it'll be for.
Yes, he's my HR person, I guess. But anyways, we just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, let us know. And until next time, we'll see ya.